Well, this week I'm a bit short of gardening content because I must have been one of the last people in the country to get COVID, but I finally got it last week. And actually, it was rougher than I was expecting. You know, a lot of people just saying it's just a bit like a bad cold and all that sort of thing. Well, you know, I found the fever to be pretty severe. Unfortunately, the fever is now broken, and so I'm feeling just about strong enough to work out into the garden to do this video, but there'll not be much gardening this week. So earlier this week I managed to get the brassica beds strulched. So I'm using this strulch, which is like a chopped straw product. Not because I'm recommending it, because I'm not at the moment, because it is quite expensive, but just because I can't source partially composted mushroom compost, which is what I like to use for a mulch. I had quite a few questions about, you know, why not use straw? Well, the main reason I don't use straw is because I've found in the past when I've used straw, for example, underneath strawberries, that I get a lot of slugs and snails kind of hiding underneath there, and I don't want to keep that, you know, underneath the brassicas. So, and you know, this it's a nice product. You know, it's being designed specifically for gardening, but as I say, it's pretty expensive. I'm using it just really as a kind of a last resort to try and do something about the water loss that we've been experiencing, you know, over the last few weeks with really hot weather. So far, you know, I'm quite pleased with it, but it's just the expense really that means that I'm a little bit dubious. I do prefer compost, but not well composted compost, because I find well composted compost is basically just like soil. You know, the moisture just wicks through that and blows away, you know, evaporates from the soil surface, just as it would if you had soil. It's only when it's kind of like, you know, mushroom compost is a very strawy compost, and when it's partially composted is very fluffy, and that very fluffy nature, I think, reduces the effectiveness of the wicking action, and it seems to work really well as a mulch, much like, for example, you know, rustly kind of leaves would, or something like that. But anything that kind of forms a tight mat would effectively wick. Oh, I'm sorry if I'm just completely so got that done, and that was actually the main gardening job of the week. I also did get, though, from my daughter when I went to visit her, when I went to collect her rather from Didcot, I got a tub of last year's potatoes that she'd forgotten about, and then they sprouted and she didn't know whether she could eat them or not, and so she just left them there. And they were actually, when I turned that tub out this week, they were in good condition, and obviously they'd all sprouted, so I thought, well, that's fine then. I'll just plant them and use them as my Christmas potatoes or late crop potatoes. So I did a video about that, and I'm not really generally a big fan of late crop potatoes, just because of the very significant risk of blight. But I find that if I do them at the beginning of July, then there's just enough time to get a reasonable crop by the time, you know, they get blight and I have to kill them. But the potatoes are always fine in the compost. So, you know, I just remove any leaves that have got blight and dispose of those. And then eventually, you know, I get to the point where I think, well, it's just too much of a pain now removing these blighted leaves. And so I just take the tops, so I pull the tops out and just leave the potatoes in the compost, and I've never lost one to blight, so I've done it for quite a few years now. And yeah, when I took my daughter back to Didcot, I was walking through these amazing cornfields. You know, I've never really been up close and personal to sweet corn in a farmer's field, and it's just lovely. You know, it's lovely to see the pace of change at that sort of scale. Obviously I see it all the time on the allotment, but you know, when you kind of walk into a field last week and you could see over it, and you know, could sort of look at the landscape and all that sort of thing, and then this week it had grown above my eye level in a week, and I couldn't see anything. I was just walking through a corridor basically through the field, and yeah, it was really nice. It's a really lovely place down there actually, and there's some amazing little villages, very expensive to live in, and lots of lovely little footpaths and things. So it's not the sort of place that I'd have ever thought of recommending as a place to visit, but yeah, it's actually really nice if you like the just ordinary English countryside, nothing special. And talking of things growing fast, my little climbing frame that's got squashes on it seems to work quite nicely at the moment. They're growing up that quite well. One of the squashes has just reached the top of the frame now, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I didn't quite anticipate it getting that big quite so quickly, but anyway, I'll reconsider that when I'm fit enough to get to the allotment. And I noticed even quite a few of my onions grown from seed in February have started to go to seed. Not a huge number, you know, maybe 5% or something like that. But we had that last year as well. And so maybe this is just a sign of things to come, is that however you grow your onions, whether it's from sets or seed, some of them are going to go to seed, and just expect some losses, or expect some onions that you're going to have to use quickly, and or process and put in the freezer. So I think with that, I'm going to call it a day. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.